We are the Church of the Larger Fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundary, working toward creating a global spiritual community, rooted in profound love, which cultivates wonder, imagination, and the courage to act. Adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic has been difficult for many bricks and mortar congregations. Early on in the pandemic, we were in a unique position to assist many congregations with the transition. We hosted special episodes of The VUU, provided advice and counseling to religious professionals, and trained congregations for live streaming worship, all while providing robust online programming for our members. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine to our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison, and investing in innovative ministry. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and to fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The VUU. The VUU is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message. Hi, this is Aisha Hauser. Welcome to The VUU. I'm in Seattle, Washington. My pronouns are she, her, and we have our hosts today. I'm so excited. Chris Rivera, Michael Tino, DC Fortune, QuianaDenae Perkins, and we're going to talk about a variety of topics that are connected. And we're going to center liberation and talk about what happened with the leak about the Supreme Court. And hope, hopelessness, community, and what it means to be fighting for liberation as faith leaders and how we hold each other and hold our community. So a lot to talk about today. And it is dreary here. So that's all I'm going to say about Seattle, Washington, land of the Coast Salish people and the Duwamish. Michael, how are you? Where are you?
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It is so nice to be back here with my fellow co-hosts here on the VUU. I'm Michael Tino here in Peekskill, New York, in the land of the Kitchewan and Wappinger bands of the Lenape Nation at the southern end of the Hudson Valley. It is good to be here. It is a beautiful, bright blue spring day here, and the trees are actively trying to kill me. The tree pollen levels here in beautiful Peekskill, New York, are in the red zone and off the chart, and I'm still breathing, and that's great. That's great, and I'm just happy to be here. Christina, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Christina Rivera, she, her pronouns, and I'm coming to you from beautiful Central Virginia, where it just has no idea what it wants to be. It is, yeah, so it's like spring, summer, fall, winter. It was hailing. And then 2 nights ago, we had a spectacular, like summer, dry heat lightning thing going on that took out all of our power right in the middle of the night. Of course, the dogs, the smoke alarm does that beep, and the dogs in the middle of the night. And well, you know how it is. I don't have to tell you. So yeah, that's how I'm doing. DC, how's our weather getting to you?
It's here in South Jersey, I think Chris and Michael and I are in this like triangle of pollen. So I'm here in South Jersey. I am in the process of moving. Everything I own is either in a box or falling out of a box or has been packed in a box and I don't remember where it is. Also, the street in front of my house is under construction. So pollen mixed with asphalt and dust, and it's a party here in my sinuses. But in good news, my lilacs blossom. I brought these back from Maine a few years ago, and this is the first year that they're blossoming. And it makes me so happy and so sad because I'm getting ready to move and leave this place. But the people who are buying my house are really sweet, and they're gonna take care of my lilacs. They have promised. And so yeah, all my life is boxes. QuianaDenae, how are you doing, friend? You're muted.
I muted because I was wiggly, and so I decided I better mute in case I got too wiggly. I am well. I want to thank Aisha for calling me into community today and reminding me I needed people. It's finals time, and if you're in seminary, that means you are typing, reading, typing, and so that has just been my focus. So my friend Aisha called me up and said, it's okay to come out from underneath that pile of books, friends. And so I'm excited to be here with my VUU family today. Oh, and the weather, just as a side, two things. One, I'm in Michigan. The Potawatomi people owned this land. Everyone worked it. And today I moved back to Ann Arbor in 2015 on this day. And I arrived here, y'all, just because it is the truest, saddest story. I had $1,000 that I cleaned houses to earn in my suitcase. And a man who I'd never met picked me up at the mall to go to his house to live with him. It was some sketchy life, but it was the life I had. And I just want to acknowledge that growth and process is possible. And I honor that day, and I honor this day for the differences and the beauty they have in my life. So just wanted to throw that in
there. Oh, we are so grateful for you, QuianaDenae, for Chris, Michael, DC, for all of us together. I do want to start with the Supreme Court leak, the leak that keep in mind that what was leaked was from February. So it's, who knows where it is right now. And that Roe v. Wade is very likely going to be overturned. And what I want the five of us to talk about today is really start with bodily autonomy, because here's why I talk about reparations whenever I do workshops on anti-Blackness, on anti-racism work, because reparations for those who were enslaved starting in 1619 and genocide for the indigenous people is reparations and acknowledging that what was done is taking away the bodily autonomy of generations of people. It is all connected. None of this is separate. So talking about reparations, talking about what's happening with trans children. It's bad enough that we don't want to leave people be and affirm them for the fullness of who they are. But evangelical Christians who want this country to be a Christian theocracy, let's be clear, want to take away all bodily autonomy for anyone who is not a white cisgender heterosexual male. So let's talk about that. Let's start light.
I want to jump in with a question or with a reality. I was in space with Reverend Ninan Soto yesterday, and one of the things they talked about is how we use the word evangelical as code to mean generic Christian. And so I want to just step back a little bit and think about the language we're using to describe the community that we're worried about, right? Because it's not all evangelicals. And I'm not trying to play the all lives matter card, because that's not my intention. But what I am saying is if we can't name who's actually harming us, then we can't heal. And if we're just blanketing all of evangelicals together, then it leaves out some other denominations and other faith walks that can be just as harmful, but they're not evangelical, so we don't name them. So I guess I just want us to think about our language in that way. I don't have to, because what we're talking about is a very conservative group of Christian identity, and it isn't all evangelical.
Well, and it's not even all Christian.
Speak to that, Chris or Michael, if you can.
Yeah. Well, I think that the idea that that somehow we're laying this at the feet of the far right Christian group leaves out the fact that there are other faith traditions that are partners in anti-abortion work, and that needs to be said and lifted up, because it's like you said, Quiana, if we cannot identify the folks that are at work right now, and let's be clear, they are at work, right? The biggest myth that I believe, one of the biggest myths that I believe, when I was born and raised in Los Angeles, came to the South, to Virginia, when I was in my 30s, and I believed that it was just a matter of education, that folks in the South were ignorant, were lacking in sophistication, just didn't know enough to be liberal, right? And that is one of the most harmful stereotypes that liberals continue to put out there, because it is not true. It is not true. People are.
Michael had their hand raised. I guess I want to say there's a lot of folks who are in UU who hold those same values, who are upholding the same white supremacy, but they attend one rally a year and they think that they're covered. So that's why I guess I'm trying to step back from that language and talk about the behaviors of harm instead of the title you hold. Because I've sat in one too many spaces full of white supremacist folks who also said the same covenant I said.
Right.
Yeah. And if we just say evangelicals, that means all the UU people who are doing the same bullshit, they feel like you're not talking to me.
Right. How can it possibly be me?
Right.
So having to go back to my friend Aisha's question, can you reframe that for us again, Aisha, in the light of our recent little...
Well, here's the thing. It's a yes and, because it's a yes and. Because even other faiths, so the faith I was raised was Muslim. So any Muslims who are joining on to, which I've already, I think, saw one tweet me, like, there's no explicit ban on abortion in Islam. However, there is explicit anti LGBT folks. Like that would be the train to get on to take away autonomy for the LGBTQ community. So there's any other faith joining on this train to control the bodies of people with uteruses. The end game is to control bodies, is to control choice, is to control autonomy. And so, I think we can be, the white men in power right now, and one female who's voting for this on the Supreme Court are Christians. They're
one black man.
And one black man.
Let's be clear.
Thank you.
So,
I
think it's really important to name that the end point is a white Christian patriarchal nationalism, right? And when you're trying to enact policies that 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 lead us to something like white Christian patriarchal nationalism, you need to co-opt some people who are not white Christian or men in order to like make your case that that's not what you're trying to do, right? And so just because Clarence Thomas is voting for this, and just because Amy Coney Barrett is voting for this, does not mean that both of them are not enacting white Christian patriarchal nationalism on behalf on behalf of the white men who are in power. I mean, who is it that benefits from these policies? It's not people with uteruses. It's not trans children. It's not parents of trans children. It's not any sense of common liberation and moving forward. These policies lead to rich people getting richer, and if they didn't, they no one would be pushing them. Um,
It's always a matter of, I mean, and that's man, like there's so much connected here, and we too often, it feels to me like too often we spend our time running around putting out individual fires when we're not looking at the fact that this is a multi-front assault on liberation, on freedom, on collective progress, and we. There's an interesting thing I saw recently that somebody said that the progressives, the real progressives, and let's not talk about perfectionism amongst progressives, right? Like the conservatives, the people who are doing this oppressing, are willing to partner with people they don't like to achieve a goal. And it feels like one of the first things we do as progressives is sort out the people we don't like, which leaves us with a tiny, very pure minority of a dozen people who are going to get killed. And as hard as it is to say, there are times, and this is one of those times, where I'm beginning to think that that it might do us well to learn how to fight dirty.
DC, I don't know if we need to learn how to fight dirty, but I think one of the things, and it came up in our conversation earlier, is we have to have the capacity to say who's our friend and who's not. I think some of the things that UUs have done for a long time is we're excited if anybody shows up on our doorstep. You're like, here, it's a party. We don't question that. And I think it's where we get some of that energy of UUs believe whatever they want to believe because we're so excited you showed up. And I think we have to have a moment where we own who is us and who's not us. We have been so afraid to do that. And I got to tell you, as a person who's in community, as a person who's raising children, I've had to teach my kids who's family and who's not, who's kin and who's not. It is how they are going to survive, right? Like if they can't tell when they're not safe, if they can't tell whose behavior is aggressive or offensive or not appropriate, they will not survive. They will be taken advantage of. So we are having that same moment, I think, in UU. We cannot be afraid to name who our friends are and who they're not. And as long as we're not willing to name those folks, we're going to be in that same conundrum you're talking about, DC, where we don't have as many allies as we could. Because I think we have more allies than we realize, but we're so busy, as you said before, putting up this defense that we're so different and special. We are so snowflakey over here that nobody can come play with us. And the reality is that's not true. We could actually play with a lot of people, but we're so afraid to have a boundary. So I don't know what else to say, but other than that, but I think we have some work to do.
I think here's been my experience. Okay, here's the needle to thread. Yes, we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We don't affirm every idea. And my experience has been, especially in brick and mortar congregations, there is a different dynamic at the Church of the Larger Fellowship, which I am so grateful for. But it's in brick and mortar, what I have experienced over and over and over, and I've worked for 1, 2, 3, is white people don't want to hurt their friends' feelings. So their friends could be they could be pro-choice, but queasy about trans issues, but yet that's their friend, and they, and there's not even like, or queasy about Black Lives Matter or All Lives Matter. So that, to me, where I have found there's been people get stuck on molasses. White people is they don't want to hurt their friends' feelings. They don't want to say. So when somebody has said to me, "Well, we don't want to turn off Trump supporters," I'm like, I'm against caging children, and I'm pro human rights. I'm pro not attacking trans people. Need to have health care. We need to have universal health care. I don't care how somebody votes. I care, but I'm not going to modify my language. I'm not going to modify how I show up to not hurt the feelings of people who voted for someone who is anti-women, anti-people with uteruses, anti-humanity. And so what I have found is it's not even about purity. It's actually about who we center. And maybe there's more willingness to not center the feelings of white people and their friends. Like, what white people need, and this is something white people need to figure out themselves, is pastoral care on how to navigate a changing world. But in the meantime, we're going to fight for liberation. So children aren't caged for being brown and Black, because who we're not caging? Ukrainian families and Ukrainian children, where the immigration process is being streamlined and fast tracked. So let's be clear that there's a hierarchy in this country of who it matters, who gets affirmed, and those are white people. Go ahead, come on the screen.
I want to be on here with Aisha just because y'all can't see all my faces. That's why my co-host are laughing. Because as you're talking, I'm like this on the screen, like blinking as hard as I can. Like, you're saying so much truth. Like, you're just preaching truth right now. And I just want to acknowledge that. I want the world to see that I'm letting you know I'm hearing you so much, man. One of the things I'm going to throw in,
and the reason why
on the pot, because I like to be a pot stir, is we talk about body autonomy and being able to choose how we move in the world. Autonomy also means taking care of yourself. This stuff is intense, and it can leave you brittle and fragile. And as much as we want to be out in the streets, we also have to be mindful of how much energy we're giving to this. And I'm not saying don't give it energy, but what I am saying is, if we can honor what's happening in the process, because this isn't like the work that we have to do is now that this SCOTA thing has come up, the work we have to do is different. The work before that moment was a different set of work. And now this is out, it's a different set of work. So we all have to kind of recalibrate, I think. How do I take care of myself in the midst of all that is happening? For people who are in places like Minneapolis, where like the waves of social justice need have just not stopped, right? They just keep coming and coming and coming since May 26th of 2000. So like, how do we, in the context of community, how do we, in the context of our faith, how do we, in the context of liberation, move forward in a way that honors our whole selves? Because this work is not going to be done soon. We have a whole new agenda. We got that in 24 hours. We had a whole new agenda just like that. Somebody slipped somebody a piece of paper and we were like, oh, new job. I
mean, do we have a whole new agenda though, QuianaDenae? Or is it just a symptom of the original agenda? Because if we follow through from voter disenfranchisement, right, to the trans restrictions, to the caging of the children at the borders, to today's SCOTUS decision, like, is it a different battle, or is it the same battle for for liberation. Is it the same battle, which I name as the same battle against evil? Because I'm willing to name evil when I see it, right?
Yes.
And saying that a person with a uterus should die, that these folks want people with uteri to die, that they want our trans siblings to die rather than have the affirmation that they need. That is evil. I don't care how you package it. I don't care how you lay it out as making America great again. Give me the date that you want to make America great again to. Give me that date, because I can guarantee you any of those dates that you give me, Black and brown people were in chains of some type or another. And so I don't know if the agenda changed. I mean, I think our agenda changes so much based on being reactive to every single one of these things that wants to enslave us, that wants to diminish us, that wants to kill us, that wants us not to be the beautiful, powerful, fabulous people that we are. That to me is the agenda that I want to fight.
Yes, let's take a moment. That is exactly true, and it is evil. And the agenda that changed for me is like, now we need to make sure that once this comes down within 24 hours, there are at least, what was the count, 10 states where abortion will be illegal. So how do we get abortion pills to people? How do we make sure that people don't die on the ground and, you know, from the communities that will be most impacted? We can't afford to go across state lines, because wealthy people and people with privilege will always be able to get access to abortion. We haven't even talked about the Catholic Church buying up hospitals, which I found out the major hospital in Seattle was bought out by the Catholic Church. So that's happening.
What?
Oh yeah, I said the same thing, because I'm like, and somebody said something like, now we're Franciscan, blah blah. I'm like, what? So the Catholic Church has been buying up hospitals. No. So until this is codified into law, because I talked to a friend in Canada, and I said, and she said, well, Catholic churches own hospitals in Canada too, but they are legally forbidden from banning healthcare. So we need to codify. But yes, back to what Chris said. Yes, 1000%. This is evil forces at work, and the only reason why our focus, it is the same agenda of liberation, and it's mitigating harm. It's the same reason why, like, you know, voting is harm reduction. Voting for less shitty politicians, and frankly, Democrats who every time they had a supermajority fucking missed the opportunity to codify abortion and make it law. Why? I don't know, because they were going to piss off people. It's so infuriating, because there's no reason to. Here's the thing, we're in an abusive relationship. Oppression is abuse, it's cruelty. And but it is. So when I see the post yesterday, this post went around like, I support, and they had a list of names and why people were getting abortions. No. Fuck that noise. I support bodily autonomy. I support people getting universal health care so they can have bodily autonomy. I support universal basic income so people can have bodily autonomy to live, to simply live. So it is evil. What is happening in this country is beyond evil. It has been evil. So it is the same fight. And when there's, you know, when the house is on fire, we go to that house, and it feels like all the houses are on fire, right? And so that's why Kimberly Crenshaw, intersectionality. If your allyship is not intersectional, it is self-fucking serving. So when we found out about forced sterilization in detention camps, did I see calls for a national strike? No, I did not. So
You're calling out that intersection. I see you.
I think that it's worth saying that this has been a long term trajectory, right? This is not like,
Mhm.
oh, they're voting to overturn Roe, quelle surprise, right? I mean, that is
No.
not what's happening
No.
here. And it's not just one law, right? It's everyone who has justified supporting politicians of whatever party, but mostly one, but of whatever party, who say things like, "Oh, I'll vote for this marginally qualified, illegally appointed judge because they've promised to respect Roe as precedent, even though everything they've ever written says they're going to overturn it." Like, bullshit. It's bullshit. And you know, we have to like peel the peel the layer off that bullshit, uh because it's not like Amy Coney Barrett, who um woke up this, like, some morning in February and said, "Oh, I'd like to give away my bodily autonomy." It's that's not what happened, right?
Bodily autonomy. She's got money. She
Oh,
won't give away her bodily autonomy. Rich women or rich people who can get pregnant will continue to have access to
That's right.
abortion care if they so choose.
That is true.
so
So
you're saying
she did not give up her bodily autonomy.
she
For
took
her,
away
it's
black
I
and
got
brown and
mine,
economically
too
disadvantaged
bad for you. Yeah,
Yep. She
exactly.
took it away
We
from
have to,
people who don't have the same resources and access she does.
So it's
yeah,
also not like the National Network of Abortion Funds was created when this draft decision was leaked,
That's right.
right,
right?
yeah,
There
yeah.
are abortion funds led predominantly by black and brown women and black and brown people with uteruses who have been getting people the health care that they need for decades, for decades, and they're still going to
Mm-hmm,
do it, right? And
mm-hmm.
it's not it's not like the struggle. I mean, how many abortion clinics are there in Alabama right now?
I believe one.
Is it even one right now?
One,
I mean, how many
one,
abortion clinics are there in Arkansas right now? One,
one. I think one.
right? So, this has been a long-term strategy of doing whatever the Supreme Court would let people do to to
Mm.
to 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 take away the bodily autonomy of people without privilege.
And I just want to point to the roots of this in white supremacist patriarchy
Hmm.
that happened in like 1970. In 1970, most people were sort of like meh on abortion. They're like, what? I mean, it's a medical, it's like an appendectomy or a tonsil, whatever. It's a medical procedure. It's their business, not mine. But when race ceased to be the thing that motivated conservative voters, when that sort of, and blame it on Sesame Street and blame it on integration and everything else, when suddenly their kids started having friends that were not white, the that stopped being the motivating factor among super conservative folks. And so, and the turning point there was, I want to say in the 1970s, somebody looked at the numbers and said, oh my God, eventually white people aren't going to be the majority. And men at that time were also looking around and saying, wait a minute, women have autonomy over their own sexuality and their own sexual behavior because of birth control access, of access to contraception. And so women are empowered. We can no longer force them to bear children. And so abortion became the way. What, QuianaDenae?
And we we can't force them to be in domestic partnership with us, because there was a bunch
Correct.
of laws around
Yes.
like women couldn't have a credit card in their own name until 1977
Right.
or just some odd year. So it was
Exactly.
It was a trap. It was a
Exactly.
layered trap. It was like, if I can't make you stay with
It
me,
was a
because
trap.
domestic violence, then I
Absolutely.
can't. Then I'm gonna. It's always this myth that like women are like having babies to trap men. The truth is, y'all stopped our
Oh, hell
reproductive
no.
functioning so that we could still feed you because your mama was tired of doing it. You had to get a second mama, and so you had to make sure we had kids.
Don't even get me started.
It's
So
connected.
it is all connected. And
Yes.
here's the thing: we are not powerless. I just wrote this for the Liberal Religious Educators Association newsletter, which will be coming out. Chris and I are on the board of that together. Sistersong.net. Sistersong.net is a Black and Brown led reproductive rights organization. Now, I went on their page, and the link that I just gave to Tanner to share with folks who are watching had the Unitarian Universalist UUA reproductive justice page. So I was psyched. I'm like, look, we know how to do this. We know how to partner. UUs, we can do this. Let's join. Yes, Planned Parenthood. Yes, Sister Song and organizations, and also PFLAG, the parents of LGBTQ rights organizations. And let's support right now as much as we can, wherever you are locally, so that we are. And the what was the fund you said, Michael?
So I donate to the National Network of Abortion Funds, because they support the local abortion funds. But if you have a local abortion fund, support that. Like, go for it. Like, I support the National Network because they get money where it's most needed to the organizations that are doing what they need to do.
And I would just throw out there the layers of support. Sometimes I don't always have money, but I have a car. Guess what? I can give you a ride home. I can stay with you all day at the clinic. There's other things that you can do that are just as important. And I want to back us up because I think this one's super important. I think it's going to come up next week, which is reproductive health and education. So, right. Yeah. I will say this. I started with a UU church in 2000 in Minneapolis, and I was impressed with how these kids dealt with their autonomy and sexual health. And I was like, my kids are going to be an owl, and my daughter's about to finish owl. And it feels like this like coming home moment that she's got that, but her confidence, her understanding in her own body, her own needs, consent, that list goes on and on and on. So I think I just want to say to folks, give money if you can give money. Get on a mutual aid board in your community, give rides, offer to bring somebody a hot meal, pay for a Grubhub card for somebody who's returning home after a procedure. All of those things matter. Offer to walk someone's dog. That shit matters, y'all. And give your kids access to information about sex and their body in meaningful ways. Because I got to tell you, I know that my kids are going to be absolutely fine. I'm not going to ever say my child will never come to me and say, Mom, I need money for an abortion. What I'm saying to you is they have the skills, the tools, the language, and understanding about their bodies and their needs so that they could come to me. So there's a bunch of places along the spectrum where you can step in. It doesn't have to be. And y'all, you can also step back. You can also rest. There will be another fight in another moment. Take a deep breath and rest. Get your battle gear cleaned up. Get that extra pair of socks in your bag and find a way to rest just as much as you find a way to fight. There's so much to do. So, friend, go ahead, friend.
Well, I just want to, because one of the things I'm seeing, and I live in Seattle, where I got to meet the person who started Shout Your Abortion, Amelia Bono, who's amazing. She's an extraordinary person. And yes, shout your abortion, and you don't have to either. Like, what I kind of lament, and it kind of happened during the Me Too movement too. It's not that we don't share your story if that is what you want to do, but don't feel like you have to share your story as part of activism. And I'm, I overshare. I'm an overshare. So it's not that but I'm saying again, choice. It is your choice. I feel my heart kind of goes out to, like, I'm seeing folks starting to tell their story, and I'm like, if you want to tell your story, tell it, but don't tell it as, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like it's again part of choice. It's you get to choose how and when, where you share how you live your life and why. And I also, right.
Yeah, and absolutely. Because do I need to tell everybody that I had my appendix out? I had an appendectomy in order to justify that I had my appendix out? No. There's no, there why on earth do we feel like we have to, be there telling our stories for something that is a medical procedure, right?
Well, and I think
Michael, what I was just going to quickly say is, ooh, that eye roll was real. Go ahead, Michael.
No, go,
okay.
Please. That was not an eye roll.
Okay, it's okay if it was. We're humans, and you get to roll your eyes at me.
I was looking at you on the camera.
Oh. I was just going to say it feels like a sharing of the wound and not from the, I think it's a sharing, not because you're wounded because you had an abortion or whatever the story is. I think it's a sharing from a wounded place and not a healed place all the time. And so when I hear folks sharing from that wounded place, Aisha, it makes me sad for them. I want you to share from a place where you feel healed and whole, or I can help you get healed and whole, not from a place where you're showing me your wound to just show me. That's not healthy.
And it's a wounded place because society stigmatizes that bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
Right. And so if your wound is healed enough, and you share it, that's leading us toward a place where society might not stigmatize it as much. And I think about, okay, if someone figured out that by banning appendectomies, they could systematically kill poor Black and brown people, they'd fucking ban appendectomies tomorrow. Like, let's just be clear, and then we'd have to shout our appendectomies. We would have to do it. So yeah, it's the stigma.
And it's not the stigma of that particular autonomy, it's the stigma of that body. It is the body that is not cisgender, heterosexual, white, and male. That is the offense. In the same way, Black and brown skin is the danger to police. Right?
And
I was afraid. Why were you afraid? Because he was Black. That's what it boils down to. Why don't you want this person to have bodily autonomy? Because they are not like me. That's why. And it's about stigmatizing women's bodies.
But I want to take us a little gender roll back, because not everybody who has a uterus identifies as a woman, and those folks deserve just as much autonomy. And here's something we don't talk about as a culture. I date. It's a joke. We'll laugh at that later. Me and Aisha can probably do a whole comedy routine. But here's something I've had conversations about over time, which is saying to men, have you ever experienced abortion? And by that, I mean, have you ever been in that process where you've had that question, where you've had to come up with that money? What does that impact mean to you? And I realize in this way that we don't talk about the impact of other partners. I'm intentionally degendering that statement around abortion. I know I have autonomy in my body and I can choose an abortion, but the person who gave me that sperm might have a conversation they want to have too, or might need to process the situation as well. And I think just as much as I love how we've been talking about body autonomy, because I have autonomy to decide what happens in my body, but I also have an awareness of impact on other people. And me and that person who made that set of cells come together and have a chemical reaction in my uterus, they have not a say, but they're impacted. And so I guess I just wanted to roll back the gender piece around, like, not only everybody who has a uterus is not male identified, and men
Mhm.
get to have feelings about the process of abortion. Now, you don't get to decide what happens to me, but you can have sadness and have an emotional place around the process and the
Mhm.
experience. And I don't want to forget that. I've definitely met men where they were like, no, I've gone through that twice. And I could just tell they didn't have anywhere to process that or talk about that or to
Oh.
unpack that.
And we
But
can,
it goes back to that right to comfort, because our nation tells white men in particular that if they are uncomfortable about something, they have a right to change it. That they have
Mm.
not just a right, but a responsibility to change it. And it doesn't matter that if it's that they need to change somebody else's bodily autonomy for it. It is their right, their being, their way of moving in the world. We have told them through media, through church, through school, through all of the different ways that we get our information. They have a right to comfort and to expect comfort, and if they are not comfortable, to be able to affect change to make them comfortable.
Even violently, even with a fucking gun.
Absolutely.
If a woman
Absolutely.
says
Without
no, you
regard to
are allowed
anyone
to kill
else's
her.
comfort without regard to anyone else's comfort or safety.
Absolutely.
Let's be clear. It is the patriarchy, and this does cut across very much the Abrahamic faiths. Those are the ones I know the best, but I imagine many other faiths as well, cuts across. And the notion of control and comfort and almost the responsibility
The
to
responsibility.
control
Absolutely.
right, and do what you want. That, I mean, because yeah. So where unitarian, here's why I'm a Unitarian Universalist. Here's why. It is very important to me to affirm people in the fullness of who they are. People who are told that they are less than, people who are told that something they did is somehow against a divine being. And so I grew up in a fundamentalist home. It happened to be a Muslim fundamentalist home, but when I commiserate with those who grew up in different fundamentalist settings, again, Abrahamic faiths are the ones that I know best, and those who I've commiserated with, it is almost exactly the same, except they were allowed to eat bacon if they grew up Christian. I wasn't. So, growing up Muslim and being told, I was body shamed all the fucking time. I was slapped in the face as a college student because I stood too close to a man, and my mother witnessed it. So I have been body shamed, slut shamed. I as a teenager, because I didn't show up the way the Muslims in my family felt I should show up constantly. So I'm a UU. I'm an OWL trainer. Michael is an OWL author, and I support our whole life sexuality education so strongly. I support Unitarian Universalism because no one on this fucking planet should be told that some deity hates them because of how they live. Like I was told. I was told God hates you and will hate you for eternity. But I know trans people are told that, trans kids, people in prison who are trying to live their lives, who are part of the LGBTQ community and are shamed. So I am a Unitarian Universalist because this fucking hurting world needs a life-affirming faith that is not about heaven or hell, is not about catering to some hateful deity. Rather, it is about universal love and centering love for each other. And yes, I mean, there is evil in the world, and there's also love, and I want to center love. That's why I'm a Unitarian Universalist. That is why when white old people get their feelings hurt because we're centering the needs of those with target identities, hey, old white person, I have love for you too. And you can also go to a community center where you never have to hear the words Black Lives Matter. You can go somewhere else and deal with yourself. But here, and I'm going to love you from afar. But here we're going to fight for liberation.
I'm 100% behind the project of allowing the sperm producing people to have their feelings and process it. 100%. around that, and they need spaces to process those feelings that are not interfering with their uterus bearing partner's bodily autonomy, right?
Mm.
Like, go over here and process your feelings
Yep.
about this, because the partner who is carrying this fetus in their uterus gets to gets to make the decision about whether this is carried to term. Um,
Mm.
so just like the old white people can process their feelings,
Yes.
we can make space for you to process your feelings about this while we are moving forward on this project of liberation.
Yes.
And that's okay. You can step to the side and process your feelings. You can catch up with us at the next stop on the train. It's
Thank
okay.
Michael, I'm over here yelling amens, amen, because I think you're absolutely right. I think we do a disservice if we don't acknowledge that folks need space to process. That's all I meant.
Mm.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
you're worthy of processing, but you gotta go do that somewhere else.
Oh Lord. Something I've been I mean, we're 2 full years now plus into this pandemic. Right. And after 4 years of national, oh shit, the cats are helping. National, they're helping pack their boxes, which are of course cat traps. Anyway, but we've had like 6, 7 number of years of national trauma. And it can be really hard to talk about hope. And I see this among my congregational ministry colleagues who are like, oh my God, how do I preach about hope? I just can't do it. I haven't got it. And a friend of mine, a guy named Race Bannon, who's a leader in the men's leather community in San Francisco, shared an article that was in the New York Times by a guy named Scott Hershevitz, who is an atheist, but who attends church and attends religious services. And the thing was called "How to Pray to a God You Don't Believe in." And I was at first I was like, I don't know about this, right? I'm like, oh God, like, what is this going to be? And the thing that I took away from it was whether God exists or not, people have always done whatever it takes for them to have hope. And the world has always been fucked up. And there are always people working and hoping to make it better, with various measures of success or not throughout the eons. And he talked about his experience with a synagogue, and just hearing the words in Hebrew, knowing how many thousands of years old they were, reminded him that for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, there have been communities who are oppressing, and there have been communities who have been oppressed, and that they get together in community to share their culture and their community experience together, knowing that together they have a shot at overcoming the oppressor. And the oppressor will change their stripes over time, but that work is constant. It needs to be done. And if it didn't work, it would have stopped a while ago. You know? And I think at the end of this year, which has been this church year, which has been really, really difficult for me, that has been a life-saving message. That has been a heart-saving message, that for thousands and thousands of years, there have been assholes, and there have been people fighting assholes. And if the people fighting the assholes, if whatever they were doing didn't work, the assholes would have won, and it would be over. But there are always resistors. And so, yeah, please, QuianaDenae, share with us some bell hooks.
So yeah, I have owned this book for a year and a half. I've never been able to read it just because I haven't had the emotional capacity or space. But I decided I'm going to read it because I'm giving myself space. I'm taking up space.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot more to it on my end, but I'm just going to tell you what this this quote that rang out for me the other day as I just read the opening. It says, "Cynicism is the great mask of the disappointed and betrayed heart." And so many of us are cynical, and so many of us have a betrayed heart. And so I'm not at the point where Belle's telling us at this point how to get back to love, but I'm pretty sure it's going to involve detangling some of our disappointment and our betrayal. And we have to name it, and we have to come into love by coming into our truth and understanding who we are as loving beings so that we can be more loving. So I'm going to say my last piece, which is find places to hold on to love. Find places to hold on to yourself, whether it's Bell Hooks or Toni Morrison or the VUU crew. Find ways back to love.
Well, and for me, cynicism, optimism, like I've felt both of those in my life. And you know, if you're in a period where you're feeling optimistic, you don't get to like sit down and enjoy the view. I mean, if you need to rest because you've been working hard, you get to sit down and enjoy the view. But like if you're just like, oh la la, I feel optimistic, that doesn't mean you get to just stop. Um and you know, if you're cynical and you need your heart regenerated or reconnected, then you need to do what you need to do to do that, and that might mean taking a rest. But even when you're cynical, it doesn't mean you get to stop. Just because you're cynical, it doesn't mean just because you're cynical. If you're hurting, yes, you need to take care of yourself. um and I just this business of bending the arc of the universe toward justice, it doesn't bend by itself, friends, right?
Right?
Like it
Through
does.
that.
It's not like, oh la la la, it's just gonna bend. No, it's a lot of pushing and a lot of pulling and a lot of weight and a lot of work to bend that arc.
And
Time is
sometimes some
neutral.
heat.
Yeah.
Time is neutral. Time, there's nothing. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote this in Letter from Birmingham Jail, and may she rest in power. Kimberly Hampton used to tell the UUs all the time, read this at least once a year. Letter from Birmingham Jail, because that's what Dr. King said. Time is neutral. And I know we have like 1 minute left. I got to meet one of my absolute heroes this week. Sonia Renee Taylor was in Seattle, interviewed by my friend Ajoma Luo, and I got to meet her. And yes, they're on my
I just want to touch you. I just want to touch you.
Listen, talk about, and I didn't know about the leak until Ajoma asked Sonia, and it was genuinely, I'm so glad that's when I got to hear it, because I didn't even, it was like I was so like immersed, and the audience was mostly Black women. So that was awesome in person. And so yeah, we have optimism, we have cynicism, and we have community. I am so grateful to the VUU family, my community, my people, our people. And Chris and Michael, Mike, I do want you to end, I don't know the rat in a sewer poem.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know, and closing thoughts, and then we'll end with Michael. And next week we're gonna have Melanie Davis and Amy Johnson about our whole life leaders.
Sweet.
So Chris and Michael, let's close out.
Remind me who wrote this poem, because it's not.
Oh, I thought you had it. I did.
I have a.
Is a sewer
I have it.
rat? Oh.
Yeah.
It's 1 o'clock.
Yeah, it's like an answer to that Emily Dickinson, hope is a thing with feathers and all that stuff. It's like, oh no, Emily.
The thing I have doesn't have her name on it. So
Well, we could say is that the work continues, and like the symphony, like the choir, that can hold a note indefinitely because we take a break when the person next to us isn't taking a break. We can only do that if everybody is committed to coming back in, right? It only works if everyone is committed to coming back in and holding and sustaining the note. So
here's our
take a
closing
break.
reading.
Go ahead.
Here's our closing reading. It's a poem by Caitlin Seda. Hope is not a bird, Emily. It's a sewer rat.
There we are.
There we go.
Oh, listen to this. It's awesome.
Here is what she writes. Hope is not the thing with feathers that comes home to roost when you need it most. Hope is an ugly thing with teeth and claws and patchy fur that's seen some shit. It's what thrives in the discards and survives in the ugliest parts of our world, able to find a way to go on when nothing else can even find a way in. It's the gritty, nasty little carrier of such diseases as optimism, persistence, perseverance, and joy. Transmissible as it drags its tail across your path and bites you in the ass. Hope is not some delicate, beautiful bird, Emily. It's a lowly little sewer rat that snorts pesticides like they were lines of coke and still shows up on time to work the next day, looking no worse for the wear.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The VUU.